normal.
Right.
But if they're not getting healthy, positive attention, any attention will do. So failing to do one's schoolwork to get yelled at is a form of attention. It's not great attention, but it's
Well,
attention.
and with children, and I have never seen so many parents in my life go, "Oh, I get it now." When I talk about attention, I say attention is the issue. And they're like, "Okay, they want good attention." I said, "No, they want attention." They're like, "What?" I said, "The attention scale in your head as an adult, we go, it is good attention, no attention, bad attention. But for children, it's good attention, bad attention, then no attention at the very bottom because they want attention."
Right, right. They don't yet have the ability to discern.
Well, and as a teenager, as a small child, you don't ever really think about it in the way that I don't want anybody's attention so I can get away with something yet.
Right. Yeah.
As a teenager, it's like, I'm going to skirt by your attention so that I can get away with something. But as a small child, you don't do that. You just want the attention. It doesn't matter what it looks like.
Right. And I think it's important not to pathologize that too, because a lot of that is just normal development of children trying to separate and individuate themselves and so forth. So, I don't know, if I had a dime for every time a parent came in complaining about normal teenage behavior as though it's something pathological, I wouldn't probably have to work anymore. So we want to normalize some of this too. Normal can be developmentally normal, expected behaviors.
Those are the things that I find so funny. My favorite thing that has happened to me lately, because you can't turn off the counselor. I have a nurse who's my nurse, who does a lot of work with me. She's having problems with her 12-year-old daughter. Sound familiar? And the biggest problem that they seem to be having, it's a melded family, blah, 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 is tone. I understand what they're saying, but their tone is so bad. I'm like, so you need to become tone deaf. And they're like, what? I'm like, it doesn't matter what their tone is. If you need to respond to the words, not the tone. They're like, but the tone is driving me crazy. You're letting it drive you crazy.
Right. Well, and again, expectations with reality, right? Petulant teenager is going to communicate something in a greater level of exigency than may be necessary. So there's a teaching moment there.
Well, and unrealistic expectations. Mm-hmm. I can't expect a teenager to behave as an adult. I can.
But we do. Yeah.
One of the basic functions of being a teenager is crazy, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, if you actually put teenage behavior up against adult behavior, it always looks psychotic.
Yep.
If it doesn't look psychotic, there's some major problem going on.
Yep.
That's just my knowledge as both a parent and a therapist. It's like they should recognize the trash needs taken out when it's full to overflowing. I'm like, they don't. And you can't expect them to because they don't. You recognize it. Do they take it out when you tell them? Well, yes, they do. Then you have won the battle.
Right. But I wanted him to smile when he did it.
Yeah. Or I wanted him to notice that the dishwasher needed to be loaded. Okay, I know adults who can't figure out when the dishwasher needs to be loaded.
I'm not going to comment.
You also have that problem.
Someone in my home thinks I have that problem. Yeah, it's an opportunity to teach too. If we have expectations for our kids and we don't communicate what those expectations are repeatedly, by the way, then they're invariably not going to hit them. So it's an opportunity to say, I hear what you're saying. Hey, are you aware of your tone? Because your tone used here, I understand it. But if you use that same tone with your teacher, you might find yourself in trouble. And then they go, what is the tone? And then it's our job as parents to educate. And
that is so organized and so grown up of you. I personally pick a more humorous intervention. So respond to what they say and use their own tone back to them.
And see how they respond to that.
Well, it's fabulous. because the kids go, ew, that was awful. Well, that's the way you said it to me. I thought that's the modality for today.
So I did that with my 5-year-old. He just screams at me. It drives him berserk. And I said, don't like it. Don't talk to me like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting better.
Did he stop?
But he's 5. And Christian Conti, who's, big, mentor in my life, great friend. He has this rule of 1,000, like whoever's counting, raise your hand, I guess. But he says, if I ever get to telling my daughter 1,000 times and she still doesn't do it, then I can be upset. I was like, that's pretty good, because I think in our heads, we think that we've told our kids 1,000 times when really we've only told them like 7 or 8. And they keep letting us down.
And that's when Jerry Downing, I actually had Jerry Downing as a professor.
He's the namesake of the Downing Clinic at the University of Nevada Counseling and Education Department's counseling clinic.
Yes. He died during my tenure as a student, but amazing guy. And a lot of the things, cooperative education, like cooperative learning experience, that's from Jerry Downing, stuff like that. He was amazing. But one of the things, he was a big fan, and he's like one of the few people I really admire who is a huge fan of cognitive behavioral therapy. And he was like, you need to take that behavior that you want to fix and jelly bean it to death. It was like, oh, okay.
Explain that.
So you have the behavior that you're like, I don't like this one. I do like this one. So you jelly bean the one that you want to grow, right? You just keep jelly beaning it. Oh, you did such a great thing. Here, have another jelly bean.
Yeah.
It was like, well, now it actually cognitive behavioral therapy makes sense to me in that context in a way it never had before.
Jelly bean it to death.
Yeah.
I need to get more jelly beans.
Only if you want to encourage diabetes in your clients.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe not that many jelly beans. I'm struggling enough with 2 Advent calendars per child right now, and they're constantly consuming chocolate before breakfast.
An Advent calendar that is reusable from year to year.
That's cool. You put beer in it or what?
It's felt.
Oh.
So they get to put the number 1 on the tree or the whatever you're using every day, so that they're building something from their Advent calendar instead of consuming.
That's pretty cool. I like that idea. Because I never thought about that. You're consuming as opposed to constructing. Huh. See, learn something new every day.
Hey, I'm all about those things. You know me.
Yeah. And thinking differently and so on and so forth.
Well, as my partner of the time said, you exploded the box. You didn't just think outside it. You just exploded it. No boxes in my area unless there's a good reason for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that speaks to, my favorite word in counseling, which is intentionality. It's the spirit of knowing why you do what you do. If you can act in the spirit of intentionality, then you can have boxes. That's fine. You just know why they're there. They're not just there because they've always been there. And don't make it go away. But
no, we need that box. Why do we need that box?
And I think a lot of people end up going up, and exploding boxes just because they don't like them. And it's like, well, no, some of those we need. We need foundations. We need ethics. We need law. We need, anchoring principles. We can't just go adrift in postmodernism, pretending that everything's a construct of a construct. That leaves people with a high degree of anxiety if they don't know where they are.
Which I agree. I also think that sometimes we use those boxes, if you will, as a way to make it easier for ourselves when we would be better served by it not being so easy. So, for instance, I'm far more transparent about the being of the therapist than most therapists are. Because I don't think that it's fair to my client not to be open about who I am if I'm expecting them to be open about who they are.
You taught
I want
me
to have
that.
a relationship with them then we need to have a reciprocal relationship.
Yep. You taught me that, and it makes some people's heads pop in our clinical community. They don't like that at all.
They don't, because it's so much easier not letting people know anything about yourself.
Well, and there's a power differential that's implied there too. Like,
yeah,
if
I'm perfect,
right? Don't look behind the curtain because I might get exposed. It's like, that's okay. We're working with wounded people. They're exposing themselves.
And we ourselves are wounded people.
Usually, but we want to make sure that we're at least, working on the wounds and aware of them, and not operating out of a place of, reflexive enantiodromia, to borrow a Jung word, where we're just in the field to solve everybody else's problems because we can't solve our own. That's problematic. That can cause harm.
And if we are not open about our own issues, then we are doing that.
We will do exactly that. That's precisely it. Yep.
And I find that people's expectation that the counselor has no problems is an unrealistic expectation.
Pastors, same thing with pastors, right? And
absolutely.
And pastors get
tons. I chose not to become a pastor in my life because I did not want to be married to 200 people.
Yeah, that's real. And we could have a whole conversation about boundary setting too, and what healthy boundaries look like. And,
it's terrific. I mean, and therapeutically, being a counselor works for me because it's one person at a time or one family at a time, and I can handle that.
Yeah, and you see them on your terms, at Tuesday at 4 p.m., and you don't necessarily have to see them again on Sunday at 9:30 around everyone else. So yeah, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on with that. I really respect pastors, good pastors. I think there's some not so good pastors in the world, but I really respect good pastors. And I've had some good pastors that I've had really fabulous relationship with that have been wrought relationships because they needed to do things for the good of the congregation that weren't necessarily the best thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
But we were able to discuss that.
Sounds like some of our fights on behalf of the profession that aren't necessarily the best for individual professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a sacrifice that, sometimes people don't want to make. A lot of people are just in it for themselves, and that's fine.
Well,
but
and that's your attribution. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes they don't see it as a sacrifice that's necessary.
There's a weird aversion to the rising tide lifts all boats theory in our profession, I think. Do you see that?
I have a tendency to surround myself with people who are more positive in their interactions with the profession than others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm just, and maybe it's unique to our community here in Northern Nevada. I don't really know, but there's this weird territorialism that seems to happen in professional turf warring, and I don't get it.
Okay, that's so. When I was in school back in the day, we were really working for licensure and more.
Yeah, there was that big fight where the social workers and the psychologists apparently wanted to team up together and take the MFT's ability to practice, and that's what ended up resulting in treating of psychotic disorders being left on the table just to keep practicing. But the whole concept is bizarre to me. Like, why did the social workers and psychologists even care?
It's like, I don't want you to take away all my clients. I don't want you to take away. I don't want you to play in my sandbox because there's not enough sand in my sandbox.
That's what I don't understand.
I have yet to see a situation where there weren't enough clients.
I know.
All the therapists of whatever ilk we have. And my experience, and I think that this is something that a lot of people who are in it for the money don't really understand. My experience is that people who can't afford therapy at the $100 to $200 an hour level, because there are lots of people who work at that level, just don't get therapy. It's not that they, so the marriage and family therapist or the social worker or whoever can offer therapy at a lower cost. So